Welcome to the Very Merry Life podcast, unfiltered, unscripted, and always relatable as fuck. I'm your host, Mary Hendricks, and you might know me from Instagram as That Relatable AF Mama, who hopefully feels like an old friend at this point. And if not, hang tight and join in as things get real, honest, and probably a bit too TMI as I, and the help of some amazing guests, dive into all things mom life, marriage, sex, and more. No experts, just real life moms talking real life things. So get ready to laugh lots, cry occasionally, and leave feeling seen, supported, and inspired. Making friends is hard enough as an adult, let alone as a mom, but all of that changes right here and now. So hang on, lean in, virtually clink whatever glass you have nearby with mine, and let's go. Hi, Alli.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Thank you so much for coming on. This is going to be a good little chit chat that we're having.
Oh yeah, thanks for having me.
Always. So before we get into it, I'll let you introduce yourself to everyone, and then we'll just start talking.
Sounds great. Yeah, so I'm Alli Delozier. I am a clinical psychologist, and I work with both adults and children, but my specialties are in pediatric and child psychology. And so I work, I'm also a parent coach, and so I do a lot of coaching around different things. Like I've done coaching around anxiety, I've done parenting kids with ADHD, things like that. But really, I focus a lot on how to raise kids have a positive relationship with food and their bodies. I'm also a mom of two, and I have an almost 3-year-old and a just turned 5-month-old.
Yep.
And we were chatting before this, neither of them sleep. So yeah, I'm totally in the thick of it.
Yep.
I'm married. My husband and I have been together for like 13 years, married for 5. So, just kind of living the mom life right now.
I love it. And I can hear a little bit of Southern in your voice. Where are you from?
Yeah, so I'm from southeastern Oklahoma, and a lot of people think Oklahoma is the Midwest, and some of it is, but when you get down to the southeastern part, it's like Southern culture. And so I've been down here. So actually, this is where I'm from, and then we moved to Mississippi, and we were in the Deep South for a few years, and I was faculty there at Academic Medical Center. And then like COVID hit, we had kids, and we decided to buy a farm and move back home. So now that's
amazing.
So now, so we have a farm here at home, and I work remotely. So we're figuring it out.
I love that. I'm going to have to pick your brain on, that's like my dream one day. My husband thinks I'm nuts. I was like, I just want a farm. And he was like, you don't know anything about a farm. And I was like, I don't care. I'll learn, but I want chickens. I want chickens so badly because we have the space in our backyard to like have chickens. And he again thinks I'm crazy, but that's what I asked him for Christmas was a chicken coop. And I said, that's what I want.
I hope you get it. They are so cool. So we don't actually have chickens right now. I want them. But we need to build a coop too. But a lot of my family have chickens, so I get the eggs anyway. But they're so fun. You can just go out there and get your eggs, and they kind of turn into like your little pets. Yeah. It's
especially
cute.
Because of the cost of eggs right now. I just went to the grocery store and I left all cranky. The cost of eggs have raised 40%. That's how much, like statistically nationwide, that's how much and I realized it. Like I looked that up because I actually just made like a reel on Instagram about like coming back from the grocery store with like 5 things like bread, eggs, milk, and all those things. But eggs, the last time I went, it was $7.99 for 18 eggs. And I remember back when I buy a carton of 18 eggs for $1.89. Like I know that's what like it cost. And I'm like $7.99. I'm like, I can't right now.
Yes. It is ridiculous. Yeah. So we buy eggs from our neighbors for like a couple of dollars, and they're really delicious. So I haven't had to buy eggs in a while, and we don't have to buy beef either because we have our own beef, which helps us a lot. But even not buying those 2 things at the grocery store, my grocery bill is astronomical. It is a struggle right now.
Yeah,
it is wild.
I know. I said to Kev, I was like, if I weren't doing this, I don't even know what we'd be doing, because I'm thankfully being able to like support our family and doing all of this like, social media stuff, but I don't know what we would do like otherwise, because we're single income. Even my stuff is like supplementary, but it's like at this point where I'm like, oh my gosh, like something's got to give at some point. But I digress. Let's get to the real good stuff.
Yeah, I could talk about groceries all day.
That's a part of the mom life. So I was drawn to your page. I remember when I found it, and I think for me, what made me want to follow you and what made me want to bring you on here is I have a history of an eating disorder. I have all of that in my background. And I think, there's so many fears that I have in terms of like my kids and how I'm going to raise them. But one of the biggest ones I have, especially because I have two daughters, and not that boys are, I think, are just as subject to this stuff, but girls, because I'm a girl and I went through it, it scares me. It scares me that I could potentially say something to them or do something that will just stick with them for the rest of their life. And I hope that they never look back one day and they're like, my mom, because I love my mom dearly. I love my mom, and my mom is a great mom. But I know a lot of the stuff I learned came from her. And she's unfortunately part of that generation where diet culture, it's like Weight Watcher Max. Like it was just all Weight Watchers, starving yourself, like hardly eating, the whole it's like a stereotype of like that generation being like, I was 89 pounds when I got married and I was able to fit back into my wedding dress after I had kids. And you're like, oh, well, it's probably because you weren't eating.
Cool. Good for you. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Cause you were starving. You were literally starving. So I'm so glad you shared that because, well, first of all, the fact that you like think about it and you're like, I don't want to pass this on to my kids means that you're probably doing things totally different already than your mom did. Right. But also you are not in the minority. So I have so many moms tell me that exact same thing. They say, I struggled with eating, or I had an eating disorder, or I had disordered eating, and I'm terrified I'm going to pass this on to my daughter. And you're right. We worry about our sons too. And we see that disordered eating is on the rise in boys as well. But it hits differently with girls. Like girls have so much pressure to conform, to be thin, and we're also the ones that tend to provide the meals for our family. We do like the grocery shopping, and we're the ones that, make sure we're eating nutritiously, and we make the, doctor's appointments and see the weights and all that stuff. And so it is different for girls. And we worry a lot about passing that on to our daughters. And again, you're not in the minority. So many women tell me that, the way that we were raised, you're right. Like, watching your mom do Weight Watchers and then do, they used to do those like juice cleanses where you were only supposed to drink like juice for 48 hours.
Slim Fast was another one that she did a lot. Like I remember her having cans of Slim Fast at home. And I think like the way Slim Fast worked, it was like you replaced 2 meals with a can of those things. And then you maybe had like one like dinner.
Yes. Yeah. And that was like normal. You're like, this isn't enough food for, I don't know, maybe a toddler, right?
Yeah.
Like that's not enough food for a grown human. I totally remember that too. I'm having flashbacks now. Like, and they were in the cans at that point. Like I feel like like they're in like the cardboard now, but they were in the cans.
Yeah.
And I even remember buying Slim Fast, like when I was, probably like a teenager or young adult as well. Like it was so normalized, I think, for us growing up that was like, this can substitute and it's okay to be hungry. And the most important thing you can be is thin. How do I get to that point?
Yeah. No. And that's the thing is like, and it's still hard to break out of. I feel like that's always going to stick with me. I've gotten to a really great place now. I feel like I'm at my like happy weight, like where it's taken me a while to get here where I still kind of struggle in wanting to get back to like before I had my third, I really got in good shape. However, I'll be very honest. I know right before I had my third, I got a little too extreme because it always teeters. It's like you get in that rhythm and then it just goes a little bit too far. And I know even just looking back at like even videos of myself here on Instagram, I'll see myself and I'm like, you were too thin. You were too thin. And I know I was getting to the point where I was like, I'll cut out a meal. I'll keep on going because you get addicted to like seeing that scale and you get addicted to like the results and you get addicted to like the compliments on all of it. Like when people comment, like you look great. Did you lose weight? Like, well, did I not look good beforehand? I don't really know how to respond to that.
Yeah. Cause those, they're like backhanded compliments, right? It's like on one side, you like feel really good. They're telling you look great. And then the other side, you're like, oh, so I didn't used to look good. I don't need to go back to that. Right.
Yeah.
And it's, and you're really observant about the pendulum swinging, right? So that's how we tend to do things. It's like in diet culture, it's really hard to just find that happy medium of I'm moving my body because it feels good. I'm eating vegetables because they feel good to me. And I'm also eating cupcakes because they make me happy, right? And we swing to the extreme of diet culture, which is working out all the time, watching the scale. There's like this gamification of it, of like, you're right. It's like gambling. It's kind of, where it's like, you're like, ooh, what is the scale going to say today? And if it's down, it feels good. And if it's up, then you know what you got to do that day. Well, I got to cut out more. And then what happens is that is not sustainable. Human behavior, you cannot, right? It's impossible. So we set ourselves up for failure, and then we swing the complete other way, right? Where we've been restricting ourselves for so long that now our body has gone into famine mode, and it says you need to eat all the things because they're not going to be here for long. And it can feel very uncontrollable, and that's where people say they feel like they're like addicted to food, or I'm addicted to sugar. And it's not that you're addicted, it's that your body is just craving what it was missing for so long. There's no willpower to sit. There's no, it's not that there's anything wrong with us for not being able to do these diety things. It's just, that's not how our bodies are meant to live.
No. And that's the biggest thing that I'm like, finally, like, actually in a really, I feel really good right now of being like, I work on what I can. I think because of having my third, it's like, I don't have the time anymore to really like, to think. And I'm like, I'm just trying to do my best at this point where I'm like, I'm going to just keep doing my best. And if I can work out that day, awesome. If I can't, then that's okay. I'm going to try eating what I can. Even before getting on here, I was like, I haven't eaten all day. So I just made myself some food, but it's like little things like that where I'm like, okay, you got to like take a second, not think so much on it. But I know for me, like with like, especially my oldest, my kids. So I'm going to say this in like the kindest way ever. I think it bothers me sometimes because I'm married to my husband. He is 220 pounds and 6'4". I'm 5'2". My kids, my daughters, I want to say that my daughters tend to take after him genetically. So they, in terms of the percentiles for everything, they've always been at the 99, like for everything, head, weight, height. And it's always been that way. And I get comments here and there, and I think it's starting to drive me nuts now because my youngest is almost 9 months old, so she doesn't know. But my oldest is starting to pay attention with certain things. But like even over the summer, like someone was like, she's big for her age and things like that. And I'm like, I know what you're trying to say because she does. She looks like she's going to be 5 in December, but she looks like she could be 7. And I was like, I have a feeling, and I have a really good friend of mine who has a very similar build, and I can see my daughter looking like her. She's beautiful. And I can see that. And my friend and I were talking about it, and she said, I could see this. She said, because I look very much like Cassidy when I was younger. And she said, but I've grown to love myself now, but back then it was a very hard thing to navigate. And that's like my concern. It's like, I don't know what she's going to grow up into, but I'm like, it's just so hard, especially when other people make comments and I'm like, enough, like, please stop commenting on my baby.
Well, yes. You're like, can you just, we don't need any comments about my kid's body size or shape or weight. Right. And it's so hard because we as women carry these internal fears for our kids already. Right. So we worry that somebody's going to bully our kids or make fun of them for their body size or shape or weight already. Like, I remember just growing quickly, and I'm like 5'8", 5'9". I'm pretty tall. And it was always something that people commented on when I grew kind of quickly as a younger person. And I remember this belief in my mind, well, girls are supposed to be small. Girls are supposed to be petite. I'm not that. And this feeling this need early on to shrink. And again, that's a belief we have. And if we have that we can have, and if we have that belief, right, then like, we might be drawn to dieting, right? We might be drawn to doing things to modify our body. And we know that, right? We as adult women who grew up in that culture, we're like, oh God, I hope my kids don't experience this. Like, I do not want them to ever feel that way about their beautiful bodies. And then people say stuff, right? And you're like, you are planting the seed, just stop. I work a lot with parents about that, setting boundaries, how to talk to people about that. But also, what can you do? What skills can you develop as a parent at home so that you can build resilience in your kids. So when they hear those comments, they just roll right off their shoulder.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and that's that's my hope.
Mhm.
That's why I want you on, because
Yeah.
I need to learn the skills.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and you probably already have so many of them that you don't know, but it's learning about, or relearning, I should say, for a lot of us. How do we talk about food in a way that's neutral? How
Yeah.
do we talk about bodies in a way that's neutral or positive? All bodies, right? And it's the kind of the little subtle things that, watching our body language, maybe around the way we serve foods, or maybe trying some different things at the table so that we're not reinforcing, different I guess kind of like traditions, that we grew up with around the table, maybe like clean happy plate clubs, or or one bite rules, or things like that can, for some kids, kind of start to create food rules in their mind that can be unhelpful and can kind of prop up disordered eating. Not necessarily that will cause disordered eating. I never want to say that. But for some kids, we just really need to be careful about how we talk about food and keep it neutral so that we can build that resilience so that they're not drawn toward disordered eating.
Yeah. Well, and I think so. I recently saw, I followed someone on TikTok, and I commented on it because she had put up saying it was an audio that said, this is going to make a lot of people mad. And she had put that she puts a child lock on her pantry. And she said, I do this. And I actually do this. I have a lock on my pantry and I have a lock on my fridge. And the reason I do it is not because I'm like, no food. If they ask me, I'm going to go grab something. And my kid, I hardly ever lock it so they can get in there. But the fridge, it's more the freezer. And it's because when I'm upstairs handling my third, I'll come downstairs and they're eating a tub of ice cream at this point.
Yes.
So I'm like,
yes.
I'm like, I need to have some course of action here. But I even get worried about that, where I'm like, I don't want, because nothing's off limits. Like I grew up in a household where my mom always had, like, I was that friend out of my friend group where I always had the good snacks. Like my mom always had them on hand, where I think I picked up a lot of like behaviors, diet culture behaviors because of my mom, but I never really struggled with weight per se. Like I never dealt with it. I never dealt with extremes. I don't think until like later in my middle school years, but as a little kid, I was kind of like, I'll eat when I'm hungry. I'll grab a snack, but I don't have to go overboard, type of thing. I think that really changed mentality wise when puberty and all that awkward crap hit.
Ugh.
But
and that's really common for sure. Of like, we're all kind of born eating intuitively. Like we know when we're hungry, we know when we're full, and then we can kind of eat to those cues. Or if we misinterpret them, then we learn them as we go on. And then we get older, and especially around like that puberty age, like the prefrontal cortex comes online in your brain, which is responsible for like those higher order skills, like understanding and planning. And we start to, think in a more complex way and more nuanced way. And then that's, and it's just kind of this domino effect of like, oh gosh, and now we hit puberty. And what happens when girls hit puberty? They gain weight, they get bigger. Yeah. It's supposed to happen. Yeah. But society tells us it shouldn't, that we should always look pre-pubertal.
Yeah. Well, and I talked to so I remember the first time ever thinking I was fat was on vacation. I want to say it was, I was like, I want to say probably 10. And I think whenever it was like starting to like slowly, cause I hit like, I think I got my period around like, I don't remember at this point, honestly, 14, but it's that like, the like a beginning of middle school years where you're starting to get like the little like buds in your breasts and like things like that, where like things are starting to switch. And I remember I was on vacation. I think I had a training bra, and I think it stuck out kind of like what this was. And my mom in a family picture told me to like fix my shirt, and it was really embarrassing at the time. And I will always remember that happening. And it wasn't anything negative. I just remember being embarrassed. But then I remember later in that vacation eating ice cream, and for some reason, just thinking like I'm fat, like I'm eating this, I'm fat. And I just don't even know where that happened. There might've been a conversation. I don't know. But then I always remember, like, I knew how many points were in an Oreo in like 6th grade and things like that. And I always thought it was because I was watching my mom do this stuff where I was like, well, I picked up what she was doing. And then my sister was over, I don't know, like a few months ago, and she was saying that my mom and her were having a conversation, and how my mom had admitted that she felt bad because she was the one that actually introduced Weight Watchers to me, because she started to notice that during puberty, I was starting to put on a little bit of weight. I don't remember that.
Yeah.
But she admitted it. And I was like, well, it all makes sense now.
Yeah.
Like, it makes sense. And again, my mom was just trying to do what was best. Like, she wasn't, and that's the thing, is like, I don't even look at my mom and think that and be like, how dare you have done that to me? She's a product of her generation. And it's unfortunately something that's just trickling down the rope. And she thought she was doing what was best for me because she was afraid of what could be. I don't know. Like, so.
Totally. I mean, you think about our society, and there's so much, just fat phobia. The idea that women would gain weight, our fear is, I'm going to gain weight and I'm not going to be accepted, or I'm going to be rejected, or I'm not going to be lovable anymore. Yeah. And you think about our moms who had less, I guess, maybe, like power or privilege than we do, even, like economic privilege and in power in the workplace and things like that, less choice a little bit. And they're, especially their moms. And it was really important, right, that they be able to be accepted by society and be able to like find someone to support them. If they, weren't, we think like our grandmas, maybe they couldn't work outside the home. They needed to find somebody that could support them. And you think our moms growing up with that from their moms, and then their thinking could very much be, if I don't help my daughter learn how to stay a certain size, then she's going to be rejected, right? This is how I protect her from being rejected. And just, it did a lot of harm to our generation. And at the same time, now we say, my job is not to modify my child's body or to teach her how to do that. My job is to teach my child how to love her body and be confident in her body, no matter what it looks like. So that when she hears comments like that, they just roll off like, what is that? Water on a duck, whatever that saying is.
Yeah. That's the big thing. Like I recently started this thing on, I call it bouncing forward, with the bounce back culture after having kids and things like that. And I said, it's not bouncing back, because for me, like, and someone had commented saying like, I'm sorry, because I did a reel and they said, I'm sorry, I'm just as deserving to bounce back too. And I said, of course you are, but that's not the thing, because now you're viewing that where you're at right now is a bad place to be. And you're always going to be switching. You're moving forward. We're never going back in life. There's no way I can't go back to yesterday. And I said, it's this whole idea of loving yourself enough to want to get to tomorrow, however that might be. Yeah. And for me, like, that's the type of things that I'm trying to instill in myself, even because it's hard. It's hard not to like kind of think about it, where it's like, I don't want to work out to punish myself. I want to work out because I love myself and I feel good. And I want my kids to work out and move their bodies because they love their bodies. That's what's good for their body. I'm going to, eat right because it's good for their body, or I'm going to eat a piece of cake because it's good for my heart type of thing. Like, it's good for my spirit. But
it's because our mental health matters too. It's not just about being in perfect physical condition. I mean, we see that stress impacts outcomes like as more than food, right? Like if you're always stressed about food and what's going in your body and cutting out things that you think are bad for you, you're going to be sicker than if you, just ate the cupcake and just didn't stress about it. Right.
Yeah. Cause the moment you stress about it, then you're always like putting all this weight into that. And I know I used to do that big, like I would starve myself on end. And then I would give myself an allowance, but guess what? I would go crazy. I would go absolutely insane with the stuff that I wasn't allowing myself to eat. And then I would hate myself. And it was just.
We'll be back after a quick break. Eye-Opening Moments podcasts are real-life stories of adversity, encounters, and perspectives. They are moments that can lift your spirits, give you some food for thought, or move you. For the introspective mind that likes to reflect, discover, and find solutions or meaning in a complex life, listen to Eye-Opening Moments podcasts.
Not a fun place to be.
Yeah.
So
no, the diet cycle, that is so universal, what people go through. Like you hear people say like, I can eat so well all day. And then by the end of the day, I eat so unhealthy, quote unquote, healthy and unhealthy. And it's like, there's no other way to do it. That is what diets are.
Yeah.
And right. And did you know the diet and wellness industry? It's like, don't quote me on this. I'm not a great interviewee. I should know this, but it's like a $70 billion industry. So, right. So the goal isn't to help you be healthier. The goal is for them to make money off of you, and they want a return customer. And then they want your children to be their return customer and your grandchildren. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's getting sneakier and sneakier, where now we're like, there's so much pressure on moms to feed kids a certain way, right? Like, you should only feed organic, or you should only let them have, they should all be vegetarian, or don't drink milk because it's inflammatory, or don't serve rice because it has arsenic. And I'm not saying anyone can choose what's right for them, but every single food now has a warning label like that. If you followed everyone's advice, there would be no food left to eat. And it is so much pressure on moms. And it's putting food into categories for our children. So I talk a lot about this, but it's putting food into black and white. And this is one of the primary characteristics of disordered eating, is black and white thinking around food. Broccoli is good. I should eat a lot of it. Cupcakes are bad. I shouldn't eat those, or I should only eat a little. And when we do that around food, it's not actually helping us make like healthy choices or eat what we need. It's just causing us to feel guilty about the choices we make. Right. Because then if we eat the cupcake, it means, well, I'm bad, or I have no willpower, or this is bad for me. When in reality, like, one cupcake is not going to hurt anybody, but it can. Thinking about food that way can really hurt you. And eating disorders are one of the most dangerous mental health conditions you could have. So, I'm kind of on my soapbox, but it's really important to me that when we think about health, we think about mental health as well.
Yeah, well, totally. I think food and mental health go hand in hand. I mean,
oh, absolutely.
It's, I watch it. I watch it with friends. I watched it with myself. I watched it with family. It's just, it's sad. It's sad, and it's heartbreaking. And at the end, I feel like I know people in my life. It's very rare for me to say that I know someone in my life that has a really good, healthy relationship with food, because it's very hard to meet someone like that. Because it's a
minority.
It is, because I even think of my, like my family members. I can think of my aunts and stuff like that, where either they're, or in-laws or anything like that, where I have in-laws who are struggling and incredibly stick thin, and they don't eat a single darn thing. And then I have it on the opposite, where they were that same exact way, but now they're older, and now they're on the complete other side of the spectrum, where they're incredibly unhealthy and overweight, because they just, at some point it teeters. Like you said, it's either one or the other. And that's all I feel like I know. It's like a teeter. It's like the extremes on both sides.
Yes.
It's very hard.
I mean, and again, it's like that's propping up this industry, right? The $70 billion industry. And that's what we see. There is no evidence to suggest that weight loss diets work to change your body for the long term. So 95% of people who go on a diet and lose a significant amount of weight regain that weight, and then most of them gain back more, and then they do it again over and over. And so over time, you're actually increasing your weight. And not that our weight should matter at all, but I say that to say that the thing we're being sold to correct this problem that we're being told we have it doesn't do it, right? It's not working, but it's the only tool we think we have. And I just want to offer up another tool of, maybe instead of focusing on changing our bodies, we do exactly what you're saying, where we bounce forward. We just think, well, maybe instead of changing my body, I can change the way I think about my body. I can change the behaviors I do that make me feel good or make me feel bad. And I can focus on that, and then maybe just see how you feel about your body over time. Because what I've noticed is when we focus on those things instead of losing weight, that's when we see body acceptance and self-love start to blossom. Whereas if your focus is on losing weight or changing your body to conform to this ideal, you will never get there. There will never be a day when you say, oh, I'm perfect today. I'm done with this. This is where I'm supposed to be. Right?
Nope. Because I got to, I have like a goal weight in my head. Like, I know I do. I know I have like a weight in my head where I'm like, if I got there, everything would be good. But guess what? That goal weight, when I did get there, it then shifted and it went lower. And then when I got there, then it went lower again. And then it turned into, I don't even know. It became an addiction to like hit your goal weight. And then you stress so much about it. And it, it was awful. That was like in college, and that was a terrible time for me. Oh my God. And I hope
absolutely.
I hope no one has to deal with that.
Yes. And I've been in a similar experiences. Like I'm thinking back, when I was in graduate school, like, I was really, it was a lot of stress on my plate, and I was like developing a stomach ulcer, and I wasn't eating enough and eating consistently. And then I got mono, which was crazy to get mono, like as an adult. I got mono and got really sick with that. And for a long time, and I had a lot of like fatigue and just problems with that. And I lost a significant amount of weight. And this was right before I was about to get married. And I remember thinking, I did not realize that I'd lost weight like I had. And I remember feeling guilty that I wasn't working out and dieting before my wedding. I was like, I should be working out. I should be getting toned. This isn't, this is what I'm supposed to do. And I look back now, and I was very thin, and I was very sick. Right. So when I was at my thinnest, when people would say, that's how you're supposed to look, you should be happy because you're in this body, I was at my most stressed and the sickest I'd ever been.
Same.
Right. And it's so clear to us now, and all we want to do is avoid that for our daughters and for our sons. But what you're doing is right. Like this, like by saying bouncing forward, right? That is so powerful to teach your kids, like to show them, like, mom isn't going to worry about getting back into this old body that I used to have. This is my new body, and I'm going to love this body for what it does and where it takes me and how it loves you guys. And that's what I'm going to focus on. And I'm not going to focus on trying to restrict myself into a smaller size. I saw that, and I was like, oh, I got to get that hoodie. That is so, so cool.
Yeah. I'm using all the fun. I'm using all the funds for it too, I don't know if you saw, I'm doing like a Christmas wish on my page where I'm giving the funds to all of that. So if you do want one, then that's where the funds are going. I'm going to nomination only for the Christmas. I'm going to gift the prize money or the funds of all that to one family that was nominated. So.
Well, everybody listens to this episode then that needs to go buy that. Then just one, because they're cute, but then also what a great thing to do. Yeah. I thought that was great. And, I'm 5 months postpartum, and, all of this work I'm doing is focused on having a better relationship with food and your body for parents and for their kids. So it's not just about how do I fix this for my kids, but maybe how can you fix this for yourself? Because
I think it's like a healing of your inner child. Like a lot of us, I think that's what motherhood kind of has done for me, is it brought out these behaviors in myself that I don't think you realize a lot of stuff. And like people talk about trauma and stuff like that, but like these little things that you just don't realize were such an impact in your life until you had kids. And then you start projecting them on your kids. Yes. And that's what it is. It's like, we forget that our kids are going to be complete human beings aside from us. They are not us. They're not clones, but for some reason we look at them like they are our second chance on things. And a lot of the times they are, but I think that's where it's like, in a good way. Like we need to make sure that second chance is a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So the fact that you're aware that you're doing it, that's the good thing, right? Because you can kind of see maybe what triggers you or what you do that might be more rooted in the inner child, right? And what you didn't have or what you needed. And our parents did, they did the best they could. We're doing the best we can. Our kids will probably end up in therapy like we all do. But right. We're gonna try so hard. They're still gonna end up in therapy. We're gonna be like, well, shoot, right? Like,
I always say, I saw someone recently talking about, like, they called it big T trauma and little T trauma. I don't know what that stood for, but they're talking about it, and they're like, the big trauma is like, the stuff that you can't expect, the disasters, the tragedies type stuff like that. And the little T trauma is like the little things. So they just get implanted and kind of build you up. And I was like, I mean, my hope is I give them enough trauma to just make them funny. Cause I can't, how boring will that be if I like, I have to give them something. I have to give them something.
Yeah, we can't. Exactly. We can't be perfect, right? Because then like what are they going to joke about, right? When they're adults.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, and it's so important that we think that way too, because like, and I've got the pendulum swings in motherhood too. Like I've been in this place where I'm like, I have to be the perfect mom all the time, and I'm a child psychologist, so there's extra pressure. But then also realizing like we mess up, we screw up, right? And it's like, what's even better than being perfect is letting your kids see you mess up and showing them how to fix it.
Yeah.
And it's the same with food and body stuff, right? Too, like people are like, oh, I've been modeling all these bad habits for my kid. I've been telling them they can't have cupcakes until they eat their broccoli, and I've been telling them that sugar is poison. And oh my gosh, what? I'm like, it's fine. Like it's okay. It's okay, because now you have the opportunity to come in and just talk differently about food, or they've seen me dieting. What do I do? You just talk about it. Let's just not make it this big secret of like, why is mom trying to change her body? Let's just talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, like the big thing I do is the snack thing is an issue. And what I'm trying to get better on is now just bringing in healthier snacks. And I try and like put the apples and the bananas. I've read that somewhere. It's like, put that stuff at arm's reach. And that's why like literally the lock is on the pantry, because my kids are smart and they'll climb the pantry because they know where the stuff is. And I don't want to stop bringing that into my house, but I need some set of like moderation, because they are smart little cookies when they know I am upstairs and nursing their sister or changing her diaper or putting her down for a nap or whatever. I can hear like little feet, and then I'll hear the pantry door, or I'll hear the like digging of the refrigerator. And I'm like, what are you doing? But even like the other day, like my
cookie
daughter,
time, it's 9 a.m. and I'm going to have this cookie.
or it literally last weekend, it was like a whole carton of ice cream that my daughter like pretty much consumed in that time. And I tried so hard to make it, I kind of felt bad because I don't know if I screwed up or not, but like later that day, we have a Burger King in town. So every once a week, I get them chicken fries and French fries, and it's like our thing, and it's fun. And I told my daughter, and I came down and she ate a good portion of this ice cream carton. It was a good amount of ice cream. And I said, we're not getting chicken fries today. And then she freaked out, and I was like, well, I don't want to screw her up. I was like, cause you second guess everything, but I was like, I have to teach her moderation. I don't know how to teach this moderation without like hopefully damaging her, because I'm like, it's all about balance. Like I'm not against anything. You can eat all of that. But at the same time, if you eat a whole entire carton of ice cream, you're not getting a whole chicken fries and French fries and a milkshake afterwards. They're not going to do that. And I said, maybe we can go get that in a few days. But I said, that's not the case. I'm going to make you lunch at home when you're hungry. But then I was like, of course, second guessing myself, because I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you hadn't experienced that before, right? And it's like you in our brains too, we're like, oh my gosh, like she's out of control, right? That's kind of what we think. When we see a kid like go to town on dessert, we're like, will they ever stop? It can be that inner child comes out, right? Like that, like if we were to be around ice cream uncontrolled like that, we would feel, we would be around ice cream like that, we would feel uncontrolled. Like loss of control, excuse me. I'm mixing my words up. And so when we see a kid like that can do that can be really triggering for us, right? And we can think like, oh my gosh, like this is how you're going to learn to eat. You're only going to ever eat ice cream or junk food. I'm a bad mom if I now let you have Burger King because you had ice cream for breakfast. Like, what do I do? How do I handle this? And it can be really stressful in the moment for sure. And that's what, I work with parents around that of like, okay, so what can we do to set up systems in your house so that your kids have access to diverse foods? They have access to broccoli and to ice cream and to chicken nuggets and to chicken thigh, and like all the different foods. Yeah. And then how can we make all those foods feel even? Because what happens is when we put sugar or like fun foods on a pedestal, we can make them want those foods more because they're like, these are special foods. I don't get them all the time. When I have them, that's a special thing. And then we can also make them feel restricted from those things. Yeah. So then they can feel like, I need to eat as much as I can when I have it because I don't know when I'm going to have it again. Even if they're not restricted, if sometimes kids can feel like that, because it's just our body's natural way of responding. And that can make things hard for us. And we can see food obsessions start to pop up. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like, for example, in that scenario, what would you recommend because I keep all that stuff in my house. So I try and like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty open about that stuff. My rule, like usually if they come and they ask like, hey, can I have, a cookie for breakfast? And I'm like, no, you're going to eat breakfast
Mm-hmm.
food, which of course usually I end
Yeah.
up like kicking myself because then it's like cinnamon toast crunch, which probably has as much sugar in it as the cookie itself, if not more. But like I try and like set up like I'm like, no, mommy's gonna make this for you, and then later you can have this. I
Mm-hmm.
promise you can have this later. We're just gonna eat this right now. And I try and do
Yeah.
that. And like even with my daughter, and I explained to her later, and she calmed down and like she really threw a shit fit, which of course, again, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
it stressed me out because I was like, whoa, I was like, have we screwed her up? Is she now just like this like
Mm-hmm.
food crazed person? And like I said,
Yeah.
with my oldest, especially, and I don't know where my youngest is going to fall, but my girls, like I said, my daughter Cassidy is 99 percentile weight and 99 percentile height. And she's been that way since birth.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing has changed. And I asked the doctor once, because again, like comments get made to me and I'm like, what happens if she was over 99%? So if I
Mm-hmm.
think it was kind of triggering, like when I hear percentile, sometimes it triggers the whole BMI thing.
Mm-hmm.
I hated the BMI as a kid. I was
Yes.
I was
Yes.
always overweight. So for me, I'm like, so what happens if she's a little overweight? Like, are you telling me that she's close to being overweight where she's been this way since birth and I haven't done anything different? So I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I think it definitely gets to me and I'm trying to like be very, very good about it, but I also want to acknowledge the seriousness of it. If my daughter, was at the same time, I want to make sure that she's as healthy as possible. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
it's so hard.
Well, so let's talk about percentiles for a second, right? Like when we think about percentiles, we automatically, well, and it's not we automatically, but pediatricians, tend to kind of, well, and I don't want to bad talk pediatricians. Pediatricians are wonderful. Like there's some really great ones out there, but we might have this idea that we should be at the 50th percentile. Like the 50th percentile is the place to be. This is this golden place, but it's not an ideal. All it means is that there's this bell curve and people fall across that bell curve naturally.
Yeah.
So naturally you see people at the first percentile and at the 99th percentile. And you just see the most of them around that 25 to 75 percentiles. My kid also, my dad is, your husband's 6'4", my dad's 6'4". Everybody in my family is tall. I'm tall. My husband's tall. Our kids are going to be in those 90th percentiles, right? Yeah. And that's just where, our genes lie. But when we go to the doctors and they tell us that, we think, and I get that feeling too. I'm like, ooh, what does that mean?
A bad thing?
Right?
Yeah,
And
is this a bad thing? Like, what am I doing? Am I not feeding them right? Like, what am I doing? And you can't help it because again, whatever she falls at, she's fine. I want to make sure she's healthy. I don't give a crap about anything else. That's what I'm caring about. So it's like, you just get in your head with the moment you say that.
And it's like, don't even tell me. I don't need to know these unless there's a problem. And you could even say that. I would recommend any parent who is triggered by that, especially somebody that has a history of eating disorders, tell your pediatrician, look, unless there's a concern with their percentiles, if they've dropped off or if they jumped percentile to the point that you're like, ooh, I think there might be some underlying medical problem that we need to look at. I don't need to know them. Yeah. And that might take that off of you so you don't feel that trigger. It's the same with, I don't own a scale in my house anymore because I personally don't need one and I find it triggering to have around.
Yeah, well, that or going to the doctors. Like when I was pregnant, that was like the biggest piece of advice that I give moms, especially when you're pregnant and that weight is going to go up. There's no way around it. I always step on backwards, like because I know they need it.
Love that.
Medical stuff, but I always tell the nurses, and the nurses will never make you feel bad. I just always
nurses
tell them,
are a gift from God.
Yeah, I always tell them. I said I'm going to step on backwards. I have a little bit of an issue with my weight, so I said if you don't mind, just make sure you don't say it to me. And they've always been very respectful of it. No one's ever made me feel silly for asking that. So I always give that recommendation to someone.
Because they've gone through it too, probably, right? They're like, I get it, girl.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that you did that, but also that you like shared that with people so that when other moms get pregnant and go through that experience of seeing the weight go up. And I remember with my first being just fixated on tracking my weight because that's really the only thing you're told is don't gain too much weight. They don't tell you like how to be healthy. They just say, this is the recommended weight gain. And then when you shoot past that, you're like, what did I do wrong? And so I love that you promote that. And, we do the same thing for our kids. Like if our kids don't need to know their weight. And so you can say that with the pediatricians as well, with the nurses, like we drop your kids off like, hey, we don't discuss weight in front of the kids. If you have a concern about anything, I'm happy to talk about it with you without the kids in the room or by phone, but it's not something we talk about with our kids. Because, you know, I have heard a lot of horror stories, and I've seen them because I've worked in medical clinics predominantly, where I get referrals about that. And it's oftentimes girls going through puberty. They're supposed to gain weight, but there's a misconception that they shouldn't. And then they get referred to me to quote unquote eat healthy, which is just, we know what that means, right? Yeah. And that, I mean, that was one of the things that really drew me into wanting to do more to help parents have the skills to combat this, because diet culture is just, it's everywhere. It's in your pediatrician's office, and they don't even, you know, aren't doing anything to, you know, they don't want to hurt your kids. They're there.
No, well, even our pediatrician, I love my pediatrician, but we walk in and right on the board, right in the front, right where you sign in, there's a board and it goes through all of the different drinks that you can have, like a Starbucks, a Gatorade, soda, things like that. But then underneath it, they have a bag of sugar, and it shows how much sugar is in each one. And I get it. I get what you're doing. Like, I get that that's an important conversation, because there are people who are just consuming that stuff left and right. And I do think it's an issue, but it's just like, if I were a kid and I were to see that, like, there's a reason I can't even to this day drink a Coca-Cola. I cannot. There are certain things that I can't drink. I don't get Starbucks.
Yeah, that's like a fear food for you.
Well, it is. But even like Starbucks, like being a mom, you know, the whole, like, if there's like a Target Starbucks mom, like the look or like a persona, that's not me. Like I always say that to people. I'm like, you're never going to see me joking about like getting a Starbucks because I can't, like, I mentally cannot bring myself to go get a Starbucks drink. If I do, it has to be on a very rare occasion that it's happening. I even have to wear, like, people ask me on my morning stories, I'll weigh out my creamer, my coffee creamer. I have a scale. And a lot of people think that it's a coffee warmer, and they're like, wait, what is that? And I'm like, it's a scale. And they're like, why are you measuring out your creamer? And I said, there's a lot of behaviors that I do that I'm just, I cannot break away from, unfortunately, where I attribute stuff like that. Like I am always thinking, like, my husband, I just heard him get downstairs, but I know he gets Taco Bell on the weekends.
Yes.
And he always asked me, do I want anything? And I said, no. And he's like, well, you know, you can eat that. And I said, I know that, but it's not worth the mental anguish that I'm going to go through the rest of the day if I eat it. So
punishing yourself.
Yeah. And unfortunately, and I just know it. I know that about myself, and I try everything I can, but at the end of the day, it's been who I am for so long that that's just not going to happen. When I was pregnant, I think I was a little bit more like, okay, well, whatever. But I think not being pregnant anymore, so. Yeah.
Well, and you're right. Like those food rules, they get so ingrained, and we have, you know, we create a system of beliefs around food and around our bodies, and they're very, very hard to break through. I mean, I went through that for the longest time too, where, you know, gosh, I did Whole30. I don't know if I'm allowed to say like things like that on here, but you know, like I did Whole30.
You can say whatever.
You're right. Unfiltered. And that was really bad for me, because after that, then I was in this habit of like looking at ingredients on everything. And it becomes obsessive, and that's not healthy, right? Like feeling like you can't eat things that you want to eat, or feeling like you have to limit yourself or restrict foods for non-medical reasons, you know, that weighs on our mental health, and it weighs heavily. And then our kids do see those things and they pick up on them because they're smart, and they're like, well, why are you doing that? What's that mean? Right. But they're so ingrained in us, and it can take a lot of time and a lot of understanding and being gentle with ourselves to try to move away from some of that, for sure. And developing, you know, new coping skills. And it took me a long time to break free of some of these. And what will also happen sometimes is when you do start to break free of some of these food rules, and you say like, F it, I'm going to go get a Starbucks. Well, one, you'll probably feel guilty at first after you drink it. And that might take some time. But then when you go into this mood, some people have like what they call a honeymoon phase. And so they're like, they start eating all the things they never allowed themselves to eat. And that's okay. It feels scary. It feels out of control, but it will not last. Like I went through a phase where I was eating like I used to have a thing about, you know, reading ingredients. And so I didn't eat like anything with like artificial ingredients or added ingredients. And that's all I wanted was like food that was ultra processed.
Yeah.
And over time, it didn't take long, but over time I was like, actually, I don't like a lot of these foods.
Yeah.
And now I just don't really want them as much. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But actually, I want to go back to how I used to eat, where I ate more vegetables and things like that.
Yeah.
But it's scary until you get to that place. I totally get that.
All right. Well, I might have to do that. I might have to challenge myself on that because I've been pretty good.
Yeah.
Like I don't do it. I find that I'm like pretty good on like vacation. And like now I don't come back from vacation being like uber. I used to go on vacation and like come back and be like so swollen because I went crazy with like, I gave myself permission to go nuts, and I would feel like crap on vacation. And I just don't do that anymore because I realize like there's zero pressure on any of it. Like I just have fun.
Because it used to be like your cheat day, right?
Yeah. I hate cheat days. I hate cheat days. When people say that, because I'm like, that's a disordered eating method.
Yes.
I also cannot stand when people share what I eat in a day. I hate that. That bothers me so much because it's like reading an old Cosmo magazine. Remember when you would see these celebrities, what they were eating? And I'm like, I would read that and be like, okay, well, if I'm going to look like her, I need to eat exactly everything she just ate, but her body is different than mine. So what she needs calorically is going to be completely different than mine.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and then it used to mess me up so badly. So I never share what I'm eating in a day. It's just even hard sharing.
I love that. Well, you have such a large platform, Mary. And so like to kind of take that stand is really powerful because it influences the different women and moms that follow you, right? Because if you started doing that, then people would be like, oh, I want to look like Mary, so I need to eat these things too. So it can like reinforce those food rules. And you're exactly right. It's what we're saying is, if you want to look like me, do this, right? It's kind of the like old, like when we were growing up on TV, it was like, I lost 35 pounds on Jenny Craig, right? You can too, and right? But it's just on YouTube and Instagram now.
Yeah.
Diet culture is savvy. It meets us where we are. So, you know, back then it was very like out in the front. Now it's much more subtle and it's harder to distinguish. And that can be really scary thinking about our kids.
Yeah.
You know, I'm even seeing a lot of stuff now as a psychologist that just kills me. Things like these, they call them like evidence-based like weight loss, or they'll call them like healthy lifestyles based on behavioral principles or principles of psychology.
Are you talking about
repackaging?
Noom?
Yes. Yeah. I was like, again, I'm like, I don't know if I should say this. Like, is somebody from Noom gonna like show up?
I'll never. There are certain.
No,
you can't. No, I like saying it. I like calling out that shit because there are certain things that like I just know more about them, and I'm like, it's bullshit. I'm like, it's all bullshit.
Yeah.
It's all disorder.
Exactly. It is. And well, and you're right. Like we have to call it out. We can't be afraid. Like I did a reel of like, I don't know, a couple months ago. So I was like 6 weeks postpartum and I kept getting these ads. They got my information from my insurance. I kept getting these ads for this thing called Wonder is what it is now. And about like psychological or evidence-based principles to lose weight. And I'm like, first off, like you're targeting me because I just had a baby and I'm vulnerable to your ads.
Well, that's actually,
secondly, I'm a psychologist. So like, I'm not going to fall for it.
I just had I'm like in a little like group of us moms. We're actually doing like a giveaway together, but we're in a group and we're chatting. And a lot of them was like, someone just the other day said, if I get one more message from someone that does Beachbody, because they know that I just had a baby, I'm going to lose my ever loving shit. And then I felt bad because she was like, am I fat? And I was like, absolutely, you're not fat. But that's the things that like, we don't realize is like, we are like, especially postpartum women, we're their target. Like that is like such a target audience. And like young girls are target audience. Like all of these things are huge, but especially postpartum. And that's what's making us all so confused because we have this baby and then we think that, 5 months postpartum or even 6, I always talk about the bounce back culture for me was always solidified in my head with Heidi Klum during, it was 2009, I think. When was it? It was whenever she did the Victoria's Secret model runway show. And I'll always remember it because we watched it in my sorority house. Like we always to sit and watch. And I remember she came out and she had just had her baby 6 weeks earlier. And the whole entire arena got up and applauded her when she hit the runway being 6 months postpartum with her body. And I was like, I remember thinking like that because I was young. I was like 19 and thinking like, oh shit, like that's what you're going to look like after you have a baby. I was like, that's freaking awesome. Like I'm going to look like that. And then guess what?
Great.
And when I didn't, I was like, it killed me. And I worked as a personal trainer. Like that's what I used to do before. I kind of took my passion of trying to change this whole thing. And I worked as a personal trainer, but that even killed me because I was like, I'm someone that works in the fitness industry. Why don't I know how to look like she did? It was a very big thing, but I think, we're all just
because you can't get liposuction as easily as them, right? Like that's the thing is like, maybe some of these people do it through eating and exercise, but most of the people we see are, they're doing different things to modify their body, and they have agency of their own body. They can do whatever they want with their body and no judgment or shame, but they don't tell us that.
Yeah. And some people are just genetically different. Like that's the thing is like everyone's postpartum body is going to do different things. Like, and for me, like I think this time I lost a little bit more weight with my third as opposed to like my second or my first. And one, probably because I have no time to eat. Like this time actually has been a struggle finding time to eat because I forget. And it's just because I have 3 kids.
Yeah, you're busy.
I'm like,
running a business, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like an easy thing that I don't think about. And I'm fully aware of it. So it's like me being aware of it helps. But I also just think it's different. I think it's just a different thing. And for me, breastfeeding, funny enough, breastfeeding doesn't melt the weight off. It's actually something I've talked about before. I remember being promised that the weight would just fall off plus more because I was simply breastfeeding. And when that didn't happen with any of my kids, I remember being like, what is wrong with me? Oh my God.
Yeah.
And I realized that it's actually common. Yeah. It's actually common to either hold on to weight or gain weight.
Yeah. I don't know who these people are that are losing weight breastfeeding. But again, you're right. It's like and I just remember people telling me that like, oh, don't worry, you're going to like lose your weight so quick because if you breastfeed. And it's offered up as like this solution before we even ask for the solution, right?
Yeah.
Of like,
what do you
this is going to be great. You're going to do this, but I didn't experience that.
You see what this is? What is this? A burrito?
Delicious. Love it. Right? Like, that's so sweet that he feeds you. He's like, I heard that you haven't been eating. He's like,
no, it's that. And it's because, like I said, let's Taco Bell, but he knows I will not go get that for myself.
Yeah.
So he will, maybe I tell him not to buy me anything, but he'll always come and give me bites because it's so good. So good. Oh my God.
Oh, it is delicious. And that's one of those things where, and too, Mary, some people find that they'll say like, well, when I used to eat this, like I would get really sick or I would feel bad. It makes me feel bad. But sometimes it's more of like the stress or the rebound eating that contributes to those feelings. Like, I used to, when I would eat fast food, I would binge on it because I was like, oh, this is the only time I can have this. And then of course I would feel bad afterward. And so then I would think, oh, this is bad food. If I eat this, I'm bad. I'm going to feel sick. Why do I keep making myself feel sick? What's wrong with me that I have no willpower? And now if I eat fast food, like I eat a normal amount and I usually feel fine. And by normal, I mean the amount that my body wants in that setting.
Yeah.
Not less, not more, right? What's normal for me to feel full without feeling out of control. And I don't stress about it. And I think a lot of what, we interpret as like making us feel bad around those foods too, is the stress. Like you were saying, you're like, I will stress about it all day long.
Yeah.
And that does not, that's not a good quality of life. If you're like, I don't want to eat Taco Bell because it makes me feel bad.
Yeah. No. And that's the big thing. That's why, like, I've talked about that before in my stories where someone said, like, how do you feel about like your kids getting fast food? And I was like, good, great. I love, like, I don't do it often, but we do it. And I get them, but I said, and they said, what's your favorite fast food? And I said, I don't have one because I don't get it usually. And I said, I know that's bad, but I want to make sure my kids see it at some point though. I'm going to have to, and I will. I mean, I would like, because at some point my kids are going to put 2 and 2 together that like mommy's not getting anything. So that's what I'm going to have to. We're going to work on this.
Yeah. Well, I'll help you. We'll come up with a plan, but and it doesn't have to be, I think sometimes we put a lot of stress on ourselves to like, oh gosh, now I need to do this thing or I'm going to ruin my kids. But honestly, like if you don't want to eat fast food for whatever reason, that's okay until you want to. And you're doing a good thing by still exposing your kids to it,
Yeah.
because you're showing them, like if every time you got fast food, you were like, this is the last time, this is so bad for us, this is going to make us gain weight, and gaining weight isn't good. That wouldn't be healthy. But just by saying like, yeah, today's fast food day, I love French fries too. Yeah, let me have a bite or whatever. That's a very neutral, positive way to talk about fast food, so that we're not building it up in their brains.
Yeah.
And that's what I will say, is that people that really restrict fast food around their kids become obsessed with it, or can become obsessed with it. And then what we see is either they might rebound eat on it, which means, eating past fullness, or they might start sneaking it.
Yeah.
And anytime you start sneaking something, how do you feel afterward? You feel guilty, like you did something bad.
Yeah.
And we never want our kids to feel guilty for eating. We just, if they overeat, or if they eat, whatever it is, we just want them to be able to learn, like, okay, like I ate too much, that made me feel bad. Maybe next time I should eat a little bit less. We don't want them to think I'm a bad person for overeating. Right.
Yeah. Well, and here, like, so because my daughter will do that. She'll sneak something out of the pantry, and I'll know that she has something behind her back, or she'll like hide under a blanket, and I'll be like, what are you doing? So like in that instance, how would I respond? Like what should I say if if I catch her? I don't even know what she ate.
And that's certainly tricky, because like there's more nuance to that, right? Of like, when you have snacks in your home, you want to have those snacks, but also like you have to have some type of feeding structure in your home. You have 3 kids. It can't just be a free for all day, right?
Yeah.
And
well,
so,
that's why, like I said, I have the lock from the fridge, because I'm like, when I'm downstairs, you can ask me for anything. Like, go ahead. I'm happy to get it for you. But when I'm upstairs, I'm like, I need to put that on, because I know that they know it's a free for all when I'm gone. They're like, so I'm trying to eliminate
and that could be where I have a 3-year-old, and like he's starting to like know where the snacks are, and kind of go in there and get them themselves. And that can be tricky, because for us, I'm like you, where I'm used to restricting. So this is, even though I have moved in a different direction, my automatic thought and behavior is, this is bad, we shouldn't have this. So I have to retrain my brain, and every time this happens, and it's a lot of work. And so I'd say, we're all going to make mistakes. We might change, evolve over time with how we talk about food. But one thing that can help is to have like times of the day where like, this is kind of your breakfast time, your snack time, and your lunch time. And outside of those times, you can say like, well, it'll be snack time in 15 minutes, and then you can have your cookies. Right. Yeah. And so to try to kind of get them set up on like, there's a feeding system. It's not so much of a free for all. And you can also say, if they're trying to get cookies, you can also say, well, that's not available right now. That's not what I planned for snack, but we can have cookies tomorrow for snack if we plan it out. I don't want us to run out before the end of the week. So you can kind of model like, we do have to plan for our food, because we only go to the grocery store so often.
Yep.
But different ways like that, where you can still set loving limits.
Yep.
Because what we actually see is that kids who graze all day too much, if they're going and getting their food too much, then they never really feel hungry. And so they're less likely to learn how to listen to their hunger cues. Yeah. But if we set some kind, some people do strict limits. I kind of do like general, like, kind of like open times where like, the kitchen's open now. And, if they choose not to eat, then I'm like, okay, well, we're not going to eat again until lunch. This is what we're going to have. And so that can kind of help with some of that as well, once you get them in, in that system. I mean, you might already do some of that. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, no, I like that. I think that's probably what I need a little bit more of, is like just knowing, because they would respond well to that. My kids would get excited about that, I think. That's a really good idea. Well, we can talk all day. I know we can, because this is just like, it's such an important topic. I feel like this is so important out of like so many other things. I feel like this is just, it's so big. So I'm very glad that I found you. I'm very glad that you're doing what you are on Instagram, because we need you. Us parents need you.
Thank you. Well, and same here. Yeah, I think we were fated to connect, but the platform that you have and the message that you are sharing with women, especially like the bouncing forward, and just letting moms know like, it's okay to not be perfect. It's okay to go buy a new pair of jeans when your old jeans don't fit, like, and just be who you are inside of motherhood too. Like I really connect with that. And I think you're doing a huge service for moms who, yeah. And so thank you so much for having me today.
Awesome. Well, for everyone listening, I will make sure to put Alli's information in the show notes. That way you guys can find her over on Instagram. Do you have any other like pages or anything that they can find you? Are you on TikTok or
Sure. Yeah. So I got real old real quick, and I don't know how to TikTok.
TikTok's
but
weird.
yeah, I know. I'm like, I figured out, why can't I do this? I fancy myself an intelligent person, but no. So yeah, I'm on Instagram mainly. That's the best way to connect. And, I started doing that just a few months ago, and it's been, I've really loved it, and just getting to build, be part of all these communities on there. But that's Dr. Delozier, PhD. You can follow me there at Dr. Delozier, PhD. And then I do have a website. It's Delozier PSC, as in Delozier Psychological Services and Consultation, .com. And so you can always connect either of those places if you're interested in learning more about parent coaching, or just, my Instagram, just building a community where we all support each other. And I put lots of free information on there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary. It's great talking to you.
Yeah, same. Another episode down and way more to go. But thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you would like to help support this podcast, I would love for you to subscribe. I'd love for you to share it with others and post about it on your own social media, or leave a rating and review. I cannot tell you how helpful and how appreciated those things are for me. Of course, to catch all the latest from me, you can follow me over on Instagram at The Very Merry Life, over on TikTok, The Very Merry Life. And even if you wanted to check out my monthly newsletter, you can do so by subscribing over at theverymerrylife.com. I'll see you next week. Stay tuned for more honest, raw, real chit chat. I have some amazing moms lined up coming on, and shit's going to get fun. So buckle up, Buttercup. It's going to be good.